Alright, so my supercharger is removed and obviously rebuilt, and so now I want to actually go about getting the rest of this engine cleaned up and prepped and ready to get rebuilt back to a complete engine. I have my washer reservoir and my battery tray completely removed. That's all emptied out. And then also I have some remaining metal in the intercooler, so I need to pull the intercooler off. So the next step would be to drain the intercooler circuit. There's a little drain valve on the heat exchanger, so I'll get that going. And then we'll even bypass the pump for a second to get that to run all the excess coolant out. It's been a couple minutes and now the intercooler is pretty much drained out and stopped emptying into that bucket. But I want to get every last remnant that I can out of this system before I actually take hoses apart and do that kind of business. So what I want to do is run the intercooler pump briefly so that I can try and get any residual out. If you open up your manual here and you go to page 188, you'll see that relay number 208 is the intercooler pump. If you open your underhood junction box and you look down in here, this spot right here is number 208. So you want to grab this thing with the set of pliers and just kind of pull this guy out. Be careful not to break it. And then I know from using these relays a bunch that you want to short out. Just take a little piece of wire, this is number 12 wire here, and just go ahead and bypass this relay like this. And you can hear the pump running. And that's how you do it. And so you can just test any of these devices that way, but basically you take and you touch the wire between those two posts right there, and that will complete the circuit and bypass the relay. Alright, well, we got most of it out of there. That's a pretty good start anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and put this relay back. Now I can take the intercooler lines apart. There's always going to be some amount of residual coolant left in the system, but this will be far less than if I would have done nothing here. Now it's out. Obviously you can see the chunks of metal, chunks of supercharger that are stuck down in there. But anyway, other than that, it looks pretty typical, I would say. Alright, and here's where it came from. You can see a puddle of oil in the bottom of the lower intake manifold. And that's pretty common on these trucks, especially if you do the what people call the turkey pan delete mod. I think that's kind of a stupid way to talk about it. People call this lower intake a turkey pan. I'm going to try not to, but sometimes even I let it slip. But anyway, there's a vacuum line that's actually underneath this puddle of oil, and I actually capped it and deleted it, but it would come up and ends up over here, ties into some other vacuum lines. But anyway, that's a pretty common failure point for these trucks, so if you have a chance, you'll want to do that delete. The one good thing I see here is really not a lot of metal has been ingested by the engine. You can see a little glisten on the bottom, but that's just the oil reflecting off of the casting marks. I saw one little flake of oil down in there, but other than that, I think it looks really, really good. So that means this engine didn't take down a bunch of metal, and I really wasn't worried about that, but you never do know. The intercooler does a pretty good job of catching any debris from the supercharger. Next, I'm probably going to take this intercooler tank reservoir out. It's just one quick bolt here and this whole thing comes out. There's two hoses that attach to it as well. Alright, I got the intercooler reservoir out of there now, nice and easy. But I'm kind of at a crossroads here. I need to get the valve covers off because they're leaking. You can see kind of a little bit of dribble underneath there. They're kind of leaking down a little bit. And I think the other one's doing the same, kind of weeping a little bit. It's been a few years since this engine was apart. I think 2016 was the last time I was even in here or did anything with it really. So Definitely going to have to strip it down to get access to these valve covers. That means the power steering reservoir, that means the pulley bridge, the upper radiator, very likely the intake manifold, and we're going to have to tear this thing down quite a bit. Took my auxiliary idler off, and then also I undid the bolts for the pulley bridge, so this should come off right now. There it is. It's all covered in oil and filth from all the leaks it has. I have the serpentine belt off, the alternators taken out, got some of the coolant drained, the upper hoses off of there. So yeah, we're just gonna keep picking at this, get this thing tore down, and then we'll go through individually how to put it all back together. So I skipped ahead a little bit here, got everything torn down, intake manifold off, and the valve covers most importantly exposed here. You can see that they're leaking a little bit right at the seams, so I want to get those changed and just clean things up here. Obviously it's looking pretty filthy and it was looking really nice when I put it together, so it's just kind of one of those deals. Time for a refresh, so I'm going to vacuum up all the debris that's on this, leaves and stuff like that, and get everything cleaned up, and then get the valve covers off here so we can put on fresh gaskets. Alright, so you can see now I got the valve cover off. Everything looks pretty good. No chunks, no pieces. That's nice. And we'll get this thing covered back up. Get a fresh new valve cover on it. I'll clean kind of the dirt and filth off the edge there. And we'll be starting to build this thing back up. Well, it might be a little bit of a fast forward here, but everything I think is disassembled that I need to take off this right now, and so it's kind of tore up. I was able to put all these parts in my parts washer, get them cleaned up. You better be friendly with one of those if you're going to be doing car work. It's just kind of one of those deals. You got to spend a lot of time cleaning stuff up. A lot of metal came out of this intercooler. Obviously the supercharger was tore up, so it took in a bunch of metal and actually back flushed it with my parts washer, kind of ran the fluid backwards from the bottom through the top, and that blew out most of the metal, and there was some soot and other things that are it's just kind of a nasty deal anyway. Then I used compressed air, and then I did fluid and air and fluid and air back and forth, and then I even used a garden hose sprayer and worked water through it backwards to try and flush it all out. So it eventually cleaned up to where there was nothing coming out, and I think it's pretty well clean now. That's what a clean intercooler looks like. Obviously we've all seen them where they're just totally black, and that's not going to help you go fast at all. Alright, so I got the valve covers off, everything's taken apart here. This is torn down as far as I'm going to take it. But now we're ready to start getting this thing built back up, and I'm excited to do it.